Thank you for joining this session. This session is about Teams Rooms technical deployment, where we go through all the stuff you have to do to get those Teams Rooms deployed. So let's dive right in. So my name is Johan Delliman. I'm a Microsoft 365 architect focusing on Microsoft Teams, telephony, and meeting rooms. I'm 18 years Microsoft MVP in Microsoft 365. So the agenda for today is Teams Rooms technical deployment. So let's first look at the technical overview, what we have to know before we deploy. Then we have to do some preparations before we actually create resource accounts and go to deploy those meeting rooms. Then we will discuss AOSP device management and enrolling of the Android devices, what you have to do. And then let's dig deeper into Autopilot and Intune integration, where we can deploy Teams Rooms on Windows at large scale and automated by Autopilot in Intune. And then let's go over some best practices. So technical overview. So Teams Rooms, there's a lot of Teams Rooms available, different vendors, different types of rooms. Also different types of meeting rooms. So in the previous session, we actually went over all of the details around this. So I'm not going through all of the details again, but I'm going to highlight some of those. And if you want to have more information, you can always go back to look for the other session. So for Windows, we are using Windows 11, IoT Enterprise or Windows Enterprise. And also for Windows, it is completely integrated into the Teams Rooms Pro portal for management and updates and settings. And then we have the Windows Autopilot for Teams Rooms, which we can use together with the Teams Pro portal. So for Android, we have the AOSP, Android Open Source Project, which is important now, replacement for Device Administrator, which is no longer supported. And then the Pro Portal integration is a bit limited with Android, but I have another session coming up on that. So what do we need to do for Teams Rooms on Windows and Android? So both of these, we have to do preparations. So first of all, before we can deploy, we have to create resource accounts. So to create those resource accounts, I will go through all the steps. We can do it mostly in PowerShell, but of course, if you want to do with the graphical interface, you can do most of the stuff, but not all of the stuff. So first of all, creating the resource accounts, then we have to make sure that the resource account are configured correctly so that basically they auto accept meeting invites. I will go over the details there. The resource accounts, well, they should not have a password expiration because, I mean, it is a device, a kiosk device. And if the password expires, then it will no longer be able to log in. So, and the Teams Pro portal has another solution for that. So again, we have to also assign the license, right? Either basic or pro license. And then all the other steps are basically optional, right? But I mean, doing best practices is a good idea. A phone number, well, if you have the Pro license, you can add a phone number. If you have a Teams phone deployment, then you can add, obviously, this phone number. Then you can dial from the meeting room to normal phone numbers. Now, what we have to do is create a few groups. So one for the resource accounts and one for the devices associated with Windows device itself. So first of all, we create those resource account group. So it's a user group where we put all of the resource accounts into. And then the second group that we have to create is a dynamic group for the devices, because we are going to name the devices MTR dash and then the serial number. That's the best practice. So then we can use this device to target, for example, a lot of policies so that we can configure the devices correctly, including Intune, compliance policies, conditional access policies, And then, for example, we can also generate one-time passcodes, but it's only available for Windows for easy deployment. But we'll come back to that in the session about ProPortal. Now, if you look at Teams Rooms on Windows, there are a bit of different stuff that we have to do because we want to make sure that all of these devices join Entra ID and Intune so that we can manage them correctly. So we need to make sure that we have a group created for these resource accounts so that we apply it to those resource accounts. So they have to join Entra ID, they have to join or register in Intune. And then we have to make sure that the naming is correct so that we can actually use them, for example, for autopilot configuration and deployment, and also for them to target some policies that we have to create for local account password policies, and we can add, for example, other admins to the local administrator group so that we can easily manage those devices. So additionally, we can do Windows proxies, proxy configuration, and deploy certificates. So this was the overview. Now let's dive into what we really have to do and look at the technical details for that. So let's do the preparation for Teams Rooms on Windows. So first of all, we have to create this user group. So this user group with all the resource account inside so that we force all of these accounts to register and enroll in Intune. We have to make sure that all of the devices are named and registered as MTR-serial number. And we can create a dynamic device group to actually automatically make them member of this device group so that we can apply different kind of policies to it, like the local administrative password solution, and then also local admin group membership. So first of all, this is, in my case, it's a static group. I added all of the resource accounts for Windows into it. And then we can use this group to apply on Intune so that they have to register when they log on, when we use those devices on Windows. So what we have to do on Intune is enable Intune auto enrollment. So then we go to the Intune under devices, we have Windows and then enrollment, or we just go to enrollment and we have Windows, Apple, Android, and so on. But then if we go to Windows, we see the automatic enrollment. If we click this, then we have to make sure that in my case, I say some. I'm not saying all of the devices because I'm only targeting it to the specific group where you have the resource accounts. So the Teams Rooms on Windows group that I showed you earlier has been selected for applying this auto enrollment for Intune. So in case you already have devices on Windows that are enrolled in Intune and don't have the right name, we can rename device from Intune, where we select the three dots here, and then we select rename device. So rename device, and then we say it's actually in here. So we have to use MTR- because it's best practice and it's used also in the ProPortal and when we want to do the auto enrollment or the auto deployment with autopilot in Teams ProPortal, then we have to use this. And also, just best practice. So when we do this MTR serial number, then it will be renamed to the serial number with MTR- in front. And then we say restart device, and then it will be updated. So the second thing is for the group creation, we need to create another dynamic group, and it's called a device group. It's not a user group. So we see it here. So it's a dynamic device group, and we say it's Microsoft Teams Rooms on Windows devices. And then we add a dynamic query and we say, okay, display name starts with empty or dash. You see the rule syntax below. We save it, and then it automatically gets populated with all of those meeting rooms with empty or dash serial number. Now, what we also have to do is, because best practice, we don't use the default admin password, which is SFB, right? Everyone knows this. So we can easily change this by using the Entra local administrator password solution that we just enable in, it's an Entra ID setting. It's not in Intune. So we have to enable this in Entra ID under device settings. So we enable this, and from that point on, we can use the solution, but we still have to configure it in Intune. So now we're going to create it in Intune, and it's called Labs Policy, Local Administrator Password Solution Policy, where we go to Endpoint Security, Account Protection, and we can create a new policy here. So if we create a new policy, we say the platform is Windows, and we have the local admin password solution that we are going to deploy to these Windows devices. So we just name the policy and give a description, and then we configure it. So what we want to do is we want to make a backup in the Entra ID directory so that we can easily find those passwords when we need to. So we configure this, and then you can freely choose how many days the password can be. But the most important part is here, the administrator account name. You have to configure this because it's not administrator, it is admin. So in all Teams rooms on Windows, the administrator account has been renamed to admin. So we have to make sure that we target this administrator called admin and not the default one. So obviously we have created this group and we applied these policies to this group. So this is the group that we created for the devices, and we add it to this assignment. We review and then we save. Now the same thing, like the local administrator password solution, we can also add local, or we can also add members to the administrator group on the Windows devices so that we don't have to remember or look up this specific password because it's a really long password for the admin account, because it's going to be changed by the Labs solution. So it is easier to use your own admin accounts and add them to the local administrators group. So again, we're going to create a new policy, also Windows, and local user group membership. We select this, and then, okay, we configure the basics, the name and description. And then we say here, which group. So we select the administrator group. We say we add users, and we have 3 selected users. So you can select how many you want. That's depending on you. Those will be added to the admin group. And again, we are going to use the same group, this device group on Windows, to apply these policies. So we review and we apply. So that's it for the preparations. Obviously, for Android, you don't have to do these policies for the Windows admin account and the local admin group because they don't exist on the admin platform. So now let's talk about the resource accounts that we need both for Windows and Android meeting rooms in order for the Teams application, the Teams Rooms application to log into these accounts. So what we have to do is create those resource accounts, set the correct policies, meeting acceptations and meeting settings, and then make sure that the password does not expire and assign a license. So that's basically all we have to do. And then optionally the phone number, if you want this, and enable it for voice. Now, how do we create those resource accounts? There are 2 options. Either we use PowerShell, the Exchange Online PowerShell, or we can use the Exchange Admin Center. Now, if you want to do this for passwords, we are going to set the password expiration. We can do it with PowerShell, but apparently it's not possible to do this in Entra Admin Center portal. So this one you have to do in PowerShell. So I think it's easier to do everything in PowerShell. Now also assigning licenses, that's the last step. So the assigning of the licenses, we can also do in PowerShell or in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center or the Entra Admin Center. So I have screenshots of all of these options. So first of all, the Exchange Admin Center, we go to recipients, resources, and then we can add a resource, a room resource. So if we do this, we give it a name, an email address, select the domain, and then general information is not so important now. Obviously, we have the booking delegate settings. These are important for the rooms because we want to automatically accept or decline meeting invites and potentially say like, okay, this is a Teams room. So make sure that that you know this. And then we can click next and then create this account. Now, if you want to do this with PowerShell, not sure if you worked with PowerShell before, but possibly you need to install some of the PowerShell modules. For example, the Exchange Online Management module, you will need it, and the Microsoft Graph. So both of these are required to be installed before you can do these configurations. Now, creating a room account. So like we said, we have to connect to Exchange Online. And then we have a few variables where we have password, the meeting room, the alias, display name, and response, sending back to the users saying this is a Microsoft Teams meeting room. Now the password, we have a read host, so we can type the password in PowerShell and then nobody can read it. And we can use this variable to enable it in the password, the room mailbox password. So basically, when we have all of this information, then it's just one single command to create this resource account. So new mailbox, we say the online services ID is MR, which is the meeting room, which is going to be a principal name, a user principal name. So, and then this will be created. We have a display name, the alias, and we want to enable this room's account. So that's creating the account, and then we have to configure it. So we have to set the calendar processing. And this is all of the settings that you saw before, but then in the PowerShell environment. So to disable the password, easily to do with PowerShell. You cannot do it with the Entra ID. So you have to connect to Graph and user read write, because we are going to write some settings, right? We're not only going to read. So the command is update mg user, and then the user ID, which is still in this variable, and we say password policies, disable password expiration. Now also we have to assign the license and the usage location. In order for you to get the right license, you first have to look up the SKU ID, which is this command, and it will list all of the licenses and then filter out the basic or the pro license and put it in this SKU ID value. Then we have to make sure the license is formatted as this. SKU ID is this value that we found looking for this ID. And then the first step that we do is update the user, and we say the user's location. In my case, it's Belgium. Now, sometimes you don't have to do this because you can have a default location, and if the default location is right, then there's no issue there. But potentially you have multiple countries, then you probably want to do this and set the right country location. It is important, for example, if you want to apply phone numbers, for example. Then what we do is set user license, and we add this license that we created here, and we remove licenses. This is an empty array, so it's not going to remove anything, just add some licenses. Now for licenses, we can obviously do this via the Teams admin center. No, not the Teams admin center, the Microsoft 365 admin center. We go to the user and we go to licenses and apps. We select the location, and then we select either Teams Room Basic or Teams Room Pro, depending on what license that you have. So let's go into a little demo. So if you want to create those resource accounts, just go to the Exchange Admin Center, to resources. We can add a resource account here. We say room 1, for example. Room 1, I select a domain. I'm not going to bother too much about these settings right now. Maybe capacity is 10. You should fill in all of these values. But with respect to the demo, I'm going to keep it quickly. So here we can say all of the booking options. Obviously, we want to automatically accept decline, and we say this is 18th meeting, for example. You can change those settings if it's necessary. So I'm not going to create this account now because I already have many accounts. So let's go to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. And for example, we are going to apply a license. So you select the location here. For me, this is correct. And then you select Teams Room Basic or Teams Room Pro, depending on what you have. For example, I'm going to change it here. So changes applied. Okay, so we can also do this in PowerShell. So I already installed modules and I already updated modules when necessary. So first thing we do is say import Exchange management, Exchange Online management. So we do this and the import has succeeded. So then we connect to Exchange Online, and then I will get a pop-up window where I will have to log on to Exchange Online. All right, looks like I'm connected. So let's first get this password. So now I can type the password. And then I already have room 2, so I'm going to change it to 3. So let's read all of these values. And then we are ready to execute this command, new mailbox with room WL3, then this display name and this alias, and room mailbox enabled and the password. So let's do this. So this has been succeeded. So we see the room mailbox has been created. Now we are going to execute the set calendar processing, but sometimes it takes a few seconds before this mailbox is available. But let's hope it has been, it is available right now. Let's see. If we get an error, then we can run it again. So processing has been completed. So we have created the mailbox and the calendar processing. Now we have to make sure that we connect to the graph, the Microsoft Graph, so that we can disable the password expiration and that we can enable or apply the license and apply the usage location. Now, if you have logged into Exchange Online, then you probably won't be prompted here for another logon. So what we do, the value MR still has the meeting room. So we say this meeting room password policies disable password expiration. So that's fine. Then we are going to look, for example, at all of the licenses available. So this just lists all of the the licenses. And for example, if you want to have the Microsoft Teams Rooms Pro license, then this is going to be the ID that we need in this value. So what we do is the same command, but now we are going to filter on either Teams Rooms Basic or Teams Rooms Pro, and then we take this value here and put it in this variable. So let's do the Pro version. So I can display what is in here. So it's this value. Then we create this license that we are going to put in the user for the licenses. I'm going to update the location. To Belgium. And then the last step will be adding of the license. So voila, these are all the steps necessary to create the resource account, all the settings, make sure the password has been disabled, and then adding the license and the usage location.